Welcome back to the Purpose Over Profit podcast. This week, we've got no guest. It's just Chris and I. We're going to be talking about our lessons from 2021. So we're sat here in September and I've moved into the world of business, I guess. Left my corporate job last November. Chris has been an entrepreneur for the last couple of years. He's been running his brand business for a few years now. But we regularly kind of sit back. I know I have a weekly practice where I think about what's went well, what hasn't, and what am I going to learn or do differently in the weeks to come. So I thought, listen, why not take stock, think about what we've done over the first 9 months of 2021, and hopefully there'll be some value and some lessons in there for you all as well. So yeah, I hope you enjoy this episode. So, Chris, lessons from 2021. I've been looking forward to this episode because, to be honest, it feels quite easy to think about. There's been lots of lessons for me. If anything, it's been hard to whittle it down so that we can cover this in a relatively short space of time.
That's it. I mean, especially when you consider the fact that we'll talk about lessons from 2021, but at the start of the year we're all in lockdown.
Yeah,
which you don't even consider just now because we're sitting just now. It's September. It's kind of Indian summer day to a point here. It's quite nice in Glasgow, and you can't imagine where you were way back in January. We were all locked down. Everyone was kind of panicking about what we could do, and businesses were against the wall. People were furloughed left, right, and centre. Nobody knew what the future landscape was going to be like. But look at us now. I mean, obviously there's that kind of uncertainty with the pandemic just now, but we've all got hope and we're optimistic about what we can achieve.
Yeah. Well, we certainly hope so. And yeah, like the start of the year, if I think back, it was a bloody difficult time. You know, I'd recently taken redundancy, trying to get business off the ground. My kids, I would have been at the time a 3 and a 4-year-old, not in nursery, trying to manage that, try to build business at the same time. There was no government grants for me, unfortunately. So there was no furlough payments coming for me. If I didn't work, there was nothing coming in. So yeah, it was pretty stressful those first few months of the year. But I like, what did you take out of even just the first 3 months of the year?
To be honest, it was quite a dark place for everyone. I think everyone was struggling a lot. And actually, what was good for me and for our family was we looked to the future. So we said, okay, well, this isn't going to be lasting forever. So we put business is one thing we had to consider, but we looked at our personal life, our family life, and we said, right, okay, what do we want to do in the future? So we wanted to do stuff like we wanted to go and visit more of Scotland. So we joined Historic Scotland. So we could then go and visit a lot of the castles and go and be out in nature when it was being allowed. And we actually booked some festivals, booked a couple of holidays. But when I say holidays, it's like St Andrews, and we went into Legoland, Harry Potter Studios, all this kind of stuff. We planned all that stuff in because we knew that this is going to not be, eventually it's going to end to a point, and we knew there'd be kind of a way we could get out of this. So as a family, we kind of grouped together and said, what do we want to do? We gave my son an option, my wife an option, my daughter an option, myself an option. We all picked one and we all followed that as well. So there's even a festival coming up, and it's been postponed from July, which is going to be in Rook and Glen. It's the Playground Festival. So yeah, that's coming up at the end of the month as well, to time my daughter's birthday. So everything seemed to fall into place when we wanted. So when I look back, February and March, we spent a lot of money on stuff we wanted to do, but that paid fruition throughout the year for us now to enjoy it.
Yeah, and maybe helped from a mindset point of view to keep, like, you've created some light at the end of a fairly dark tunnel.
Exactly, yeah. I mean, you need to, especially the kids were finding it hard because during the summer, we've got lots of neighbours, which is fantastic. The kids can play in each other's back gardens and stuff like that, which is great. But during those kind of darker times, we were out playing football in the garden, it was pouring down, throwing snowballs at each other, all this kind of stuff, just to try and enjoy ourselves. But yeah, you do need to look at the future and say, this isn't going to be like this forever. I mean, in Scotland, unfortunately, it's dark till about 9 o'clock in a winter day in the morning, and it's dark about 5 o'clock as well. So you're constantly in this dark element, which isn't good. So it's good for that mindset to look to the future.
Yeah. No, cool. And I've taken us off on a bit of a tangent there, but
yeah.
let's look at it. There's 3 or 4 I've got that I'd love to dig into. But what's kind of the first thing coming up for you? What's your biggest takeaways or learnings from 2021 so far?
Well, for me, I mean, there's obviously everyone's looked at this. Now I spoke about shopping and all this kind of stuff. It isn't materialistic stuff. I've kind of created memories for us as well. So I've looked at that. So one of the big things for me is about pacing yourself. It's trying to get out of that rat race as well. So I think everyone started to realise and looking at the lifestyle and the lives they leaded before the pandemic and lockdown, they understood that we were constantly just trying to achieve the next thing. We're waiting for the weekend to happen. And if we had family, the kind of quality time we were spending with our family or kids wasn't enough. So that rat race, we're always trying to achieve more. We're always trying to get to the next grade in our job. But I think the pandemic hit, and that gave us a kind of grounded element where we get to kind of understand what's important to us as well, who's important to us, and the quality time we have. So for me, a big thing for myself was about pacing yourself. Because I took a bit of a step back. My wife's a nurse. I've mentioned this before. She's a nurse. She was working in the front line, everything else. So I said to her, I'm going to take a bit of a back seat in my business and actually let you go out and not let you go out and do what you need to do. And I'll be here for the kids, especially the homeschool and everything else. And that element of giving yourself forgiveness and saying to yourself, it's okay to pace yourself. You don't need to be running at 100 miles an hour. There is going to be work coming in eventually, which for me, for lucky enough, there was constantly work. But you just got to have that kind of futuristic mindset to say that this isn't going to be forever. I can pace myself, and it's okay to not. It's okay that you haven't learned Mandarin during lockdowns and done about 100 press ups every day for the last 40 days, whatever else. It's good to give yourself this and give yourself a bit of time and peace. So for me, pacing myself and letting myself know that I don't have to be constantly trying to compete with other people. It's just about being comfortable in your own mindset and knowing you're doing well for yourself and you're looking after your family as much as you can.
Yeah, I love that, and it makes me think about what I struggled with over the summer, actually. So I don't think I was necessarily that aware of it at the time, and I wasn't wanting to pace myself in the first few months. I think I really struggled because it felt like I had to drive the business and I had to kind of build that up. Your business was probably in a bit more of a stable footing then. But certainly over the summer holidays, like I consciously got out of work so I could spend that time with the kids. Yeah. And then when it came, I was still kind of wanting to get across and move over into business. And I had to have that reflection and kind of go, no, you need to slow down. Like, actually, it's okay. Things aren't going to, go up in flames because you've taken 4 weeks and focused more on your family than you have on your business. And so I love that around pacing yourself. To me, it's like recognizing that for this particular period of time, it's like being present, recognizing what the challenges are, and recognizing there is only so many hours in a day. There's only so many hours in a week. And therefore, where do you want to be prioritizing your time? Yes, a business may be an area, but for times that needs to take a back seat. And it sounds like you kind of managed that pretty well over lockdown.
Well, there's obviously good and bad times, and we're still doing it just now, and it's all about the time you've got. So you mentioned there's only so many hours in a day. So when you think back to the amount of time you spent with your partner, your spouse, your kids, whatever else, before the pandemic and everything else, what was that quality time over quantity? So you might have had all that time, but what were you doing in the weekends? What did you actually want to be doing in the weekends? So if I said to you, Darren, like, top 3 things that are important in your life, it might be either, in fact, what are the top 3 most important things in your life? Put you on the spot.
So I think family for me is probably the priority. I wouldn't want to put 2 and 3. Security probably comes in shortly after that. So spending quality time, when I say family, spending quality time with my family, security, the security of my family, security of myself, and probably health and well-being are probably the 3 things that are most important. When I say that's in, top 3, I think they move about. I'll put myself first a lot of the time because I recognize my family will benefit if I put myself first. Not in I'm away at the pub, see you later, but if I'm getting myself to the gym, if I'm reading, if I'm meditating, if I'm taking the dog for a walk regularly, all of those stuff are going to help me, react less and respond more, in the house, and probably be a better person to be around.
That's why it's important when you think about that weekend. And the weekend comes, if you think of those 3 priorities before the pandemic, it may be different for you because I know you're a very determined person, but for people out there, it's considering before the pandemic hit, what were you doing? If your 3 priorities are family, security, and your health and well-being, at the weekend, were you fulfilling those priorities? Or were you just using the time to sit and watch Netflix and relax and do whatever else? So
yeah, well, I don't really subscribe. It's a weird one because I don't see the weekend. The weekend's lost for me now. Like, apart from, the kids like have a certain class that they'll go to on the weekend, and where we do swimming, they've got French. Lauren's starting at ballet tonight, actually.
Fantastic.
And down in Stewarton, but this whole idea that Monday to Friday and then you stop and then that's your family time. That's one of the reasons why I wanted to get out of that corporate 9 to 5, because I actually don't like, my kids weren't at school up until, well, Lauren's just gone to school. So this whole Monday to Friday where they're out of the house, we're actually only moving into that space now. So I would say up to now, Murray's only been in 3 days. Lauren was in nursery 3 days. So we, like our weekend was like Thursday to Sunday. So we definitely prioritized more family time during that time. And it meant me and Jill wanted to front load the stuff for work during the week. So where we were away, it was Monday to Wednesday. And then if one of us needed to be on a call or go to a viewing or go and check up on a refurb, those things had to be managed within the family diary. So yeah, I guess it's probably a bit different, but it's maybe a longer weekend as opposed to no weekend at all.
But so that's where we're quite similar, because we've got our own business, so that gives us the opportunity to do that. So when you think about people in the rat race, if you like, I keep on calling it that, but it's the easiest thing. That's why I used to call it to myself. But
it is a rat race. Yeah,
it is. So if you think about the people in the rat race just now that had the pandemic, a lot of time at home, and then they're starting to look at their priorities in life. They're starting to think about the weekends. They're starting to say, well, let's reevaluate what I'm actually going to be doing here with the quality time with the family or the kids or anything else. So for me, yeah, my biggest learning point was just pace yourself, give yourself forgiveness to look to the future, give yourself forgiveness to treat yourself and your family to stuff you want to do, which is memories and experiences. It doesn't have to be materialistic stuff. It doesn't have to be the biggest watch or the car or anything else. It can just be memories that you want to create and share, because you never know what the future's going to bring. You never know if there's going to be other lockdowns or whatever else. But it's good to use that time and resource as much as possible. So for me, that was a big one. What about you, Darren? What was one of your big ones, your big takeaways?
My probably biggest lesson that I learned was to trust myself a bit more. So I've already mentioned newly separated from the corporate world, albeit by my choice, thankfully. So I stepped out there. There's two ways to look at it. This is a bit of a sideways shape. It seems I've called it out there. I know people that were, you were given optional voluntary redundancy as well as me. My mindset was I chose redundancy. I chose to be made redundant, whereas people that got the exact same voluntary option as me took it as an opportunity to be the victim and say, I got made redundant. The responsibility in how you frame, like we are the stories we tell ourselves. So if you want to choose that you're the victim in that card, that's disempowering. It's going to make you feel negative. Whereas I chose otherwise to kind of see that that's something that I chose because I actually genuinely wanted that. I wanted to go and prove myself somewhere else. But this idea that I had it all figured out and that I was bulletproof, I didn't have. All right. So there was a certain amount of nervousness. It's a bit like, say like a top athlete like Usain Bolt, he maybe always thought he was the fastest man alive, but until he's won gold at the Olympics that first time or won the first gold at the Worlds, he maybe doesn't really know that he could do it. And therefore there's this nervousness that actually when the time comes, are you ready? And I think a lot of people, I often talk about if I never got presented with the opportunity to leave on good terms. I mean, I got a voluntary payment, which I was more than happy to accept to go. But that's not always an option for some people. And I don't think if hadn't been given that option, I think I might have struggled to make that jump, even though I had the security of the property portfolio on the side, knowing that we could comfortably manage on that. Because I maybe didn't 100% trust that I knew I could do it. So the first 9 months, I would say, I've proven to myself I should have trust in myself to figure it out. I don't need to know. I talk to clients about, looking at the staircase of your life, right? So you're at the bottom or you're somewhere on that staircase, and think about where you want to get to, say 5 years time or 1 year's time or 6 months time as somewhere further up that staircase. You don't need to have every step figured out. And I think I was getting really, I suppose, challenging myself and feeling a bit insecure about the fact that I didn't have all of these steps figured out. Yeah, I was like, I launched my first few courses. I had actually on my first day of self-employment, where I didn't have a job anymore, I had a course running, a group coaching program set up. I'd had all of this stuff planned, but yet there was still this nervousness. And I think if 2021's taught me the kind of most important thing is to just trust myself to figure it out, to trust that I don't need to see it all. I don't need to have it all planned out, but I maybe need to know what the next step is or the next couple of steps are. And that's enough. And there'll be doors that open off that second step or that first step that I can't even imagine yet. I can't see where necessarily the next lead's coming from or the next customer's coming from or the next group of great people that I work with are coming from. But that's cool because I'll trust that if I, keep doing the things that I'm doing myself, trusting myself to be true to who I am, the right people will come along, the right opportunities will come along as well. So yeah, that's probably a bit of a warbled answer from me, mate. Trust myself to figure it out.
But I think that's brilliant because that kind of segues into one of the points I was going to bring up, which was around having fun and push yourself to step out your comfort zone. And you've pretty much just covered that. You talked around basically you were leaving your job voluntary, you took it, you said, yes, I want this. You grasped it with both hands and celebrated and ran out the door. You had stuff lined up because you had the mindset of, I'm basically edging out of this career that I'm in just now. What doors can open up for me? What seeds can I plant just now that are going to come to fruition later on? And that's what you've done throughout that piece. You've managed to navigate that as well. You've tried stuff, I'm sure, that probably didn't work. You went, okay, that didn't work, I'll try something else. And every opportunity, there's a new door that opens. And I love that as well. Like, we are not in control of our own universe, but we're in control of our own part of our destiny. So we can control what we sometimes want to control. And a lot of that's showing up and stuff. So for me, it's about having fun as well. And this is partly why we're doing this podcast as well. We set up this podcast because we wanted to do it. You've kind of wanted to do it before, so have I. And sometimes two heads are better than one. And especially when we considered the opportunities and the guests we could bring on. And it's about showing up as well. And it's being determined. I mean, the hardest thing, you do a Wednesday session as well every night as well with your Purpose to Progress group, which is great. You've even done the Monroes and all this kind of stuff. So it's pushing yourself beyond what you can expect. And I think there's a lot of lessons there that everyone can take, including myself.
Yeah. Yeah, and I guess it's interesting you saying that. Like that felt like all very natural to me, just focusing on the stuff that I enjoyed and that I felt some sort of pull towards. So yeah, like I guess setting up the podcast, like a weekly podcast, it's actually quite a big undertaking, but it's actually felt relatively easy. I don't think setting it up originally maybe felt all that easy, but it's felt relatively easy. And do you know what? It's probably because it's been fun, it's been enjoyable. We've had interesting conversations. Us having this conversation, neither of us are getting paid for it, but it's great. It feels like a really good conversation to be having, and hopefully there'll be, a few listeners out there that will pick up some nuggets from it and go, do you know what? That's an interesting insight. I could maybe learn something from that about where they are on their journey right now. That's certainly the hope.
Well, yeah, there's a lot of, I go back to the have fun element and be determined. So for me, there's an element where you talked about how you were lucky enough to get the opportunity to voluntary redundancy. If you didn't get that, you don't know where you'd be just now. So there's probably a lot of people out there. There's people out there, to be fair, that maybe aren't in business just now or considering it as well. And if there's an opportunity that pops up in your horizon, just grasp it. Just look at what the options are. Look at the positives and think about the negatives. Don't get drawn up in the negatives, because even when I entered a rum startup project, we started this about a year and a half ago, and we actually launched it during lockdown. But this startup, we hit so many barriers: trademark issues, illustration issues, recipe issues, constant issues. Every second we turned around, there's another issue. But we kept at it. We kept at it as much as we could. And we decided to launch it during lockdown because, especially when people, not just because we're drinking a lot, but people are looking to try something new and experience something new. And we wanted to celebrate something Scottish. And for me, that was pushing myself out of my comfort zone. That was taking a partnership in a business and saying, I want to try something different here. I want to become the kind of brand expert in this area. And not even just that, it's then what came after that as well. So Darren obviously runs his coaching groups. I've jumped on people's podcasts. I've been in different coaching groups. I was on Meet the Experts with a guy called James Fleming with his groups. I've done all of these. We have to deliver a 50-minute presentation, Q&A as well. So for me, that's out of my comfort zone. What I have to do is get comfortable with that. And part of the podcast is good for that as well, gets you comfortable. But all you do is, once you do it once, you do it twice, you do it 3 times, 4 times, you get more comfortable. And the easier you do it, the better you become. But it's also looking at where you're weak as well. So weaknesses are. So I joined a Kyle Murtagh group as well, which is Speaking with Confidence. And that's all about giving you the skill set and understanding how to deliver some of these presentations or webinars as well. So again, it's looking where you're weak. So for me, my other lesson is just have fun with it and push yourself. Know where your comfort zone is and push out that. And if you're struggling, get support.
Yeah. I mean, there's tons of stuff in there, Chris. Like, I think I was listening to a podcast. I think it was Lewis Howes, and it ended up being a coaching session. I think he had with some British entrepreneur. I forget his name. Ali Abdaal, who's like, doctor turned, 7-figure entrepreneur in the digital space. But he was talking to him about the import. Or Ali Abdaal was actually talking about procrastination. So he's big on productivity. Well, he doesn't like the use of the word hacks. They're like, there's loads of tips and tricks and stuff like that. But he's like, one of the key things is like if you can make it easy and you can make it enjoyable, you're not going to procrastinate. So, yes, James Clear talks a load of these things like habits, make things easy, remove the barriers, but enjoyable, bring fun into it. Like if something's fun, and I would go a bit further on that, and I'd say if it's aligned to your values, you'll do it. You'll do it all day long. You'll do it because it's something that is inherently fulfilling you in some way, and you will do that. You'll absolutely do that. So yeah, no, I completely agree with that. I think like making things fun is a huge one. I'm curious,
because that's one of your values, isn't it? Fun.
It is one of my values. It's not one of my top three, I would say. But one that usually sticks out to me, and kind of just a segue onto that is belonging, which interestingly I figured out when I left employment I was going to be this network that I had over the last 10 years. I mean, I haven't spoken to next to no one. I've spoken to maybe 2 people since I left.
I think that says a lot about your career in SSE, though.
I think it does. Do you know what I mean? I think it does. Like, I would no. Listen, I don't take that as a negative impact on either how I've impacted their lives or vice versa. I just think people are busy and they focus on the people and the things that are around them that are necessary. So yeah, from that sense, I think a lot of us would operate out of sight, out of mind, because that is kind of where we are. I'm trying to think what I was saying. Yeah, but anyway, so I remembered that was going to be, or I knew that was going to be something I would struggle with. I knew that was a value. So I went, right, well, how do I bring belonging into areas that I want to work? So I, like podcast, belonging, feel like we're creating something together with a focus, a combined focus. Set up Purpose to Progress, closed Facebook group, all about, entrepreneurs or property people or people looking to progress in their life in some form of way, maybe feeling stuck. Like, support that. You mentioned, climbing Munro's. I organised a social night through it the other week on a cash flow board game. None of those things felt like work because they were fun. None of those things felt like work because they served my value as well, in terms of belonging. Feeling part of something which is bigger than just me. So I think, yeah, there's absolutely some truth in that. I was curious though, you mentioned fun and pushing yourself out of your comfort zone. How did you, those two things don't naturally go well together. How did you almost manufacture fun? Was it overt for you to kind of check something that you went, right, there's a weakness I want to improve myself in. How can I make that fun so I do it?
It's a great question. So there's an element where in everything you do, if it's something new to you, you get nervous, you get worried, you get the sweaty palms, you get unsure about what you're going to be doing. And I took that as, it's another podcast I listened to where the person talks about the mindset. You choose to do it. So I chose to do something that stepped me out of a comfort zone. I know that eventually that will become beneficial to me. So eventually I want to run some webinars, some coaching groups, all this stuff. So I want to get comfortable speaking to people. I want to get comfortable delivering sessions. I want to kind of work my presentations and my craft to make sure they're perfect before I go and launch this to a community. So this is where I'm not perfect, but I want to make sure it's as good as I want it to be. So what I decided to do, I know that's the fun that I want to be doing. I love talking, I love presenting and all that kind of stuff. I'm not comfortable at times talking to a group bigger than, say, 20 people. So this was an online group. It was lots of questions. It was 60 minutes. And I decided that for me, that kind of pushing yourself out of the comfort zone. I manufactured the mindset of fun as well for myself. I said, I'm choosing to do this because I know this is going to be fun for me in the end. I know once I'm in the groove, I'm in the flow of it, it's going to be fun. I bloody over-prepared, which is what you always have to do. I had far too many slides. I think I sent some stuff to you, Daz, actually. But I over-prepared. But again, that's good because then now what I've done is...
It was like 50, it was 50 minutes slot. I think you had like 80 slides or something, right? I was like that. I done the math and went, mate, I know you're going to be clicking through, but that's like, that's a lot of slides.
But most of my slides are all visual slides with like one word or something like that. Talking through it. So I did cut it down, but again, it's good to over-prepare. So then I've now niched that and cut it down. I've started to use it with clients as well to explain what brand's all about. So again, it's understanding what the pain is going to be just now, but the benefit is going to what it's going to do for your business and yourself later on. But it's good to manufacture that mindset for you to say, like, I'm actually choosing to do this. That sweaty palms, that nervousness is actually the same feeling you get from joy and excitement. And it's just saying to yourself that it's okay to be like that, because eventually by you doing it more, you'll get comfortable with it as well.
That's quite interesting. So it doesn't sound like you kind of changed the approach for how you did the thing. Like, so let's say, public speaking, you joined a group. It wasn't like, I'm going to join that group because it's more fun than that group. But it was like, I want to develop this skill. I know it's going to push me outside of my comfort zone, but I'm going to choose to tell myself that it's fun. It was more a mindset challenge as opposed to kind of changing the environment or how it was executed.
Well, yeah, it's like business, isn't it? So you have to have a strategy of how you're going to do something. So I had a target, I had a strategy, what I wanted to achieve. I looked at what support mechanisms, what goals to get me there. So that's where you look at the groups, the coaching groups or the speaking groups that can help you give you that expertise. I looked at the content I was going to put together, and then I looked at the mindset as well. So it was all those kind of three areas around experience, quality, and mindset. But yeah, that's. I mean, how do you find it, Daz? Because you obviously do your groups, you do the live sessions. I mean, how was it for you when you started doing your Facebook lives? I mean, that must have been pretty nervous at first, or was it at all?
Do you know what it was? But there's probably an element of training as a coach.
Okay.
Because a lot of that has helped, because you recognize where your focus is and your energy is when you start having those thoughts, and they're all on you. They're all selfish thoughts. So you feel nervous about something. If you're like, imagine how I'm going to come across. My hair's not quite done right. Oh man, I'm looking grey in this photo. Like, all of that stuff is on you. It's all your ego. It's all you kind of focused on protecting yourself. So, and I'll actually, this will segue onto one of mine, which is about, that's not where the focus should be. So as a coach, if you're thinking about yourself, if you're thinking about, I'm nervous in a session, right? If I'm thinking about myself, I'm thinking about how I'm coming across, like what my next question should be. Where is this going? Like, what I'm in my own head, and therefore my focus and energy is on me. And it should be over there. It should be across, either virtually across the screen, or it should be with the person that's sat in front with me. So, no, I guess, yes, I'm nervous, in terms of talking in front of camera. I've had some speaking experience before, talking in front of conferences in person, doing podcasts, prior to doing this as well. So I've maybe had some experience, but I would say it's almost recognizing that if your focus is on yourself, it's actually selfish. There might be certain points you want to make sure you get across, but then it's good to focus on what does your client need, or what does the people that will potentially be listening into your podcast need. If you're wasting some of that energy on how you look, how you might be coming across, you're definitely going to be sabotaging your performance. You're definitely going to be diluting the value that you give, which is the next point I'm going to come on to. So no, I guess is the short answer after the rambled one.
So what's the other point you want to cover?
So I think focus on value was something that you hear a lot of entrepreneurs talk about it. It was the reason we set up this podcast. We've been speaking about it for a while, certainly since tail end of last year. It was about getting ourselves to a space or a place where we had the space and headspace to actually incorporate this into our business. But yeah, focusing on value, not about, it's the title of the podcast, purpose over profit. So put in your purpose, put in your value, put in what people might need or what you think they might need ahead of monetizing, paying the bills, which for me, I struggled with to start with, right? Tail end of last year, like I talk about what puts food on the table, what pays the bills. Now I've got a property portfolio, which I was glad to build up over a period of time. And that income is there if I need it. So I feel like it's a security blanket, but I don't touch that, or I really try not to touch that. And my aim was always that would be the easy option. And it would stop me growing. It would stop me able to grow the investment portfolio as well if I was taking money out of that. So it would have some long-term detrimental effects the more I take out of my investment business. I would rather keep investing for a period of time so that when I'm 50, I can start thinking, do you know what? I'm done with that. But it's not when I'm, late 30s, turning 40. I'm like, I've got a lot of value to give. I was never of the mindset I'm going to quit my full-time job and retire, sit on the beach, like all that nonsense. No, it's a total waste of a life, I think, if that's what you end up doing. So I go, well, how could I add value to the world? But of course, so I chose to go into transformational coaching. And then it evolved towards the start of the year. I was pushing, transformational coach, I can help you, helping clients, overcome their challenges. Maybe they've become unstuck, they've experienced burnout, all of that stuff. And yeah, a few people were coming forward. Yep, I was running some group courses, which were fantastic. But then quite a few people kept coming to me and saying, by the way, see the property stuff that you've done. Could you help with that? Like, I'd really love to be where you guys are at. I'd love to build a property portfolio. So I started thinking, right, well, yeah, I can help people. Like, I'm passionate about this. I'm, really passionate about property in terms of what it can enable people to live in their life and what it's done for me. So started helping some people in that space. But I think the focus on value piece, which is what I've learned, is that at the very start, there was a nervousness to get up to an income. It was like, right, so my old salary, I wanted to hit that, or I wanted to hit half that to start with every month. Then I wanted to hit it. And over the first few months, it was like, right, okay, I'm getting there. I'm getting closer. Yep. And I was like, hit $1,000, hit $2,000, hit $3,000. And I'm like a month and I'm going, yeah, okay, this is really, really good. And I recognized and reflected that actually I was just focusing on that as a metric that was kind of telling me that I was becoming valuable. So yes, it was bringing income in, but I'm like, how can I do this in a better format? So I actually evolved mine probably a couple of months ago. I'd been thinking about doing a mastermind. All right. And there's all of this stuff about like running a mastermind, like who am I to run a mastermind? But I started working with clients and going, what are they potentially not getting from working with me? How could I be helping them in a better way? So some of my one-to-one clients that I was working, particularly in the property space, they've now moved across into my mastermind, which is a group program, group learning. And I believe there's more value in that space. So I give them all the tools and templates and support. I give them reduced price if they want to speak to me on a one-to-one basis. But they get access to all the stuff they did when they were a one-to-one client. And they're part of a group. They've created a community where they can lean on each other. And it's not about me having, the knowledge and transferring. It's about creating an environment of value, of increased value for them. And it's a cheaper price point. So it was never about how can I make more money out of my existing clients. It wasn't about how can I, add another couple of grand onto the monthly income. I started with a bunch of clients that I had, and I went, how can I serve them better than I am just now? So that focus on value has really inspired me, and now I was sitting at the breakfast table today, and there's a couple of clients in my mastermind group that have been a bit quiet. I maybe haven't heard quite as much, or I maybe just have some concerns that, like, I want to know where they're at. So I said, listen, are you free? Let's have a chat this week about where you're at and see if I can support in some way. It's not an added value piece. There's no extra income going to come in from it, but my success and my fulfillment from it is about delivering value to those clients and helping them get to where they need to be. So there's definitely been a transition once, and it's maybe a bit like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, like security, once you're security and kind of you've got a roof over your head, you've got basic needs are taken care of. It's almost like once I got to that, I started thinking more towards a self-actualization. Like, how can I be of more service to people? How can I be of greater value? And that actually becomes a hell of a lot easier because I think money follows that. This is a part of the podcast. It's like I'm focusing more on what is the purpose of this group? What is the purpose of why a client would be with me? And how can I serve that to its absolute maximum? How can I continue to improve that? And if I improve that, I'm going to have happier clients. I'm going to have greater referrals. I'm going to have more people and be able to speak more confidently about how I serve those people. So yeah, absolutely being focused more on value than just profit.
I absolutely love that ramble and rant. I thought that was fantastic in a more positive way because you've kind of summed up a few points. We talked about pacing yourself, have fun, push yourself, show up to a point. There's also that care element which you mentioned, which I want to touch on, which is it's not just focusing on value, but it's looking at where your strengths are as well. Because obviously you're a transformational coach, but you understand the property side as well. And I remember the discussions we had early doors where you're like, well, we don't really know where not to bring it in. But now it's kind of naturally came because people are saying, like, we do see you as a property guy as well. This is what you're really strong at. But at the same time, you're not just focused on, I heard this morning, a different workshop I was on. Somebody said it's not about ROI, it's about ROI. Why are we doing this? And it's about that care and commitment. ROI. And I was laughing at that. And I thought that was quite interesting. But you're right. I mean, you've talked about increasing value, and it's about taking time out and it's getting out of that rat race again. So it's taking time out and speaking to those kind of clients and going in your group and saying, is everything okay? Well, let's give you the time. What's not working for you, let's take that time to make sure it works for them as well. And that's that extra care and commitment, because if you're just looking at your bottom line about what you're bringing in, you'll start to lose sight of what you're trying to do and try to achieve. And as hard as people have targets all the time, you sometimes got to just focus on what's important for you. And I think that's fantastic. And I was going to talk about, actually, just as you talked about it, it's about focusing on your own value. You're talking about focusing on value around what you can deliver. But what is your own values in life? What are you striving to try and do? And you spoke about clients earlier on as well, which I think is good for everyone to talk about. Is that clients come and go. You have conversations with clients, you think they'll be interested in working with you, and then they'll disappear for a while. But then they might crop back up 6 months later and just say, I was having a really difficult time or whatever else, I wasn't ready. And that's fantastic, that's okay. What I would say is if you're dealing with a client, you're talking to a client, and that conversation you think is going really well, then all of a sudden it goes quiet. Don't feel that you have to hammer them with emails and constantly contact them. Just reach out, like you were saying, Darren, about your own clients, and just say, are you okay? Is everything okay? I'm here for you if you want to have a conversation. And then just leave it a while. It's not the best sales thing to do, but just leave them. You never know people's circumstances. And then what they'll do is come back when they're ready. If they do come back, fantastic. If they move on and go somewhere else, fantastic as well. Because the thing about life and work, there's plenty of work out there for everyone.
Yeah. I can't remember who the coaches were that ran this, but it's a book, The Prosperous Coach, I think. And he talks about, like, don't go to your clients and be like, oh, I'm just checking in. I just want to make sure everything's okay. Right. Actually offer some value. Like, think about, like, what might have been going on for them. Like, I've got a client that, a one-to-one client that, like, he's just had another baby. He works offshore as well. So he's kind of trying to manage that. He really wants to be back here as much as possible. And he's like beating himself up that he's not getting actions done, and he doesn't want to even sit in front of me and speak to me about it. I'm like, right, we're not, and it's like other things going on, which obviously I would speak to, but I'm like, let's stop our one-to-one coaching. How can I help? What would help? And I don't want to start coaching him again until I feel like he's in a good place and that I've been able to support him as much as I possibly can, because I just recognize he's got a lot going on at the moment. that's stuff that's like, I don't expect anything in return from that, but it's the right thing to do for that client. And it's not about, redirecting my energies anywhere else, because I've built up a relationship with someone that I care about them achieving the outcomes that they want. And I will do what it takes to support them in any way that I can, because I see there's an energy there to succeed and to kind of change that. And when you've got that as a coach, I'm happy to support that individual. So I hope that doesn't go out and suddenly all my paid clients are wanting a reduction or stop paying. But there's a lot in there around choosing to be able to do that. I couldn't have done that type of thing in a corporate job, because the rules of the game are set by someone else. The rules of my game and my business are set by me, and I can focus on what I perceive as being the best value for my clients at that time. So yeah, that was a biggie for me.
No, I think that's a great point actually, Darren. And just even talking around, you mentioned about your own kind of business and everything else. And one of the last thing I'll share before you can share as well is just around feeling. I think feeling's important as well. It's good to try stuff, and if you fail at it and you make mistakes, then what you can do is learn at it as well. So I found throughout this year I've made a couple of mistakes which I'd never ever imagined I'd make, actually, which has been a real eye-opener, but in a positive way, because it's led me down a different path around what I can do to improve as well. So what I'd say is that for me, is failing is a good one as well. Don't be afraid to fail. And that's one of my biggest lessons as well. But yeah, Daz, what do you think about failing sometimes and just learning from your mistakes?
I think failure is there's loads of cliches about it, right? Failure is a stepping stone to success. Whoever it was, I forget his name, who's created the light bulb. It's like, I had 10,000 failed attempts before Edison eyes failed, and listen, wait, everyone's probably heard that if they're tuning into this. Yeah. So I'll spare you that, but it's difficult in the moment. It's about taking a learning from the failure, because if you don't take a learning from a failure, then it's wasted. Sorry, yeah. It's wasted. So like every week, I mentioned at the top of the call, like every week I'll sit down every Sunday. Me and Jill will talk about what's went well, what hasn't, and what are we going to do differently. What have we learned? What will we do differently next week as a result of that learning? So there's kind of different components to it. So yes, fail, but it's kind of the term is fail forward. You need to be able to unpick it. You need to learn from it. And most importantly, you need to change something that you're, in the future when that presents itself again. Because otherwise things will remain the same and you'll keep failing at the same thing. Like, do something different if it's not working.
I love that. I love that, because we did that with the kids as well. What went well this week? And what didn't you like this week? What could be better? Because it's part of their kind of journal. Kids do a wee journal as well, and I think that's fantastic. That's
it's easier than saying like, what was good at school today? You get like nothing. But it's like, yeah, like I kind of do something similar. Like did someone do something nice for you today? Did you do someone nice for something else? And like focusing on gratitude in that sort of way, but it kind of teases out an answer as opposed to what went well. It's like, I can't remember. What did you do at school today? Can't remember. Yeah, but there you go.
But on that note, I've got a hard stop to go and pick up these little kids as well. So it's been fantastic chatting.
It's been a whistle stop, mate. And yeah, maybe we'll pick up part 2 of this very episode. Actually, I think it would be great, because it feels like we've barely scratched the surface of those learnings, and there's a lot of great content in there.
Yeah, I think we thought it was quite poignant time to do it, because it's coming up for autumn time as well. It'd be quite good, because obviously a lot of lessons from the second lockdown, either into summer, into the business, and we'll see what the winter brings as well. So we'll probably do a Christmas episode of this. As always, thank you so much for listening to the Pop Pod this week. If you'd like to leave a review or share the podcast with others, then that'd be awesome. You'll find us on Instagram at the Pop Pod, and on Facebook we have a community group called Purpose to Progress that anyone can join. And we'll be back every Monday with a new episode, but until then, stay on purpose, and we'll see you next week.